Hi everybody, this is lesson 5 of the beginner sequence, and today is all about back edge cuts. So we're going to introduce the mechanics of that, the dreaded helicopter of death. We're going to talk about how to use the back edge, the forward cut as a counter against the Oberhaus, and the Myers for opening sequence number 1 with the back edge cuts. So the way we start introducing back edge cuts to people is we talk about starting in this high guard, and rather than cutting forward with the lead edge, what we're going to really focus on is we're going to focus on pulling the pommel around the lead hand and letting the back edge come out. So we kind of have an escalation on how we do this. So what I actually do is I have people start in kind of a horse stance to sort of above their head, and they're just going to practice using their hips and this pommel pull to throw a false edge cut from the right. So we're just going to work on hip and hands. And so you can see my lead hand is not doing a lot of work. I'm essentially pulling the pommel around and using the hips to drive the power. And we're just going to practice cutting back edge, front edge, just back and forth using the hips and the idea of the pommel rotating around the lead hand. So again, we're not doing any big circles. We're just from this high position, pull and hip, push and hip. And so we're just going to practice this here, just to get a sense of how we can have quite a bit of power with that. If you have a Pell and you have probably, honestly, a wooden or nylon waster would be better than a steel sword, but at the very least you can practice softly, just making sure you're having good edge alignment. Soft hands are really important. If you try to have a death grip, you're going to end up flatting stuff. So if you lead with your knuckles, because you have a rigid hand, you're going to hit flat. So make sure that you have a nice enough hand. If you want to transition to the thumb grip so that your thumb is underneath, that's great, and you can keep the thumb grip. And just practice back and forth, pulling and pushing your pommel around your lead hand. Kind of watch students go through this. Once they start feeling comfortable, we start introducing just some really basic offline steps. So now, rather than the horse stance, we'll start with the right foot back, start above the head, and now we're going to step and pivot. So now we're behind our sword, having thrown the false edge cut. I've got my thumb grip, and then step and pivot with the pommel push, now a lead edge. And so we're going to get used to, rather than just turning the hips, actually using the step. And again, if I have my Pell, I can be in my high guard with the right foot back edge, lead edge, back edge, lead edge. Just back and forth, back and forth. Just like that. Once that starts feeling comfortable, we can start working on passing forward and back with the back edge and the lead edge. So again, on my right foot back, high guard, and now I'm gonna step and back edge, step and lead edge, focusing on keeping the thumb grip, leading with the edge, pushing and pulling with the pommel. So as you can see, let me do this sideways. My lead hand is not moving a ton. It's really the pommel hand. It's doing a lot of the work with the step. So we start with kind of that horse stance, just the focusing on the pommel around the lead hand and using the hips. Then we work on that kind of offline step. Once we're comfortable with that, we start the passing steps forward and back. If students start feeling comfortable with that, and really kind of depends on the pace. Some students, this motion seems to come pretty naturally and they can work through these progressions fairly quickly. Some students, especially if they haven't thought about back edge strikes, this is really kind of uncomfortable for them, so this might be as far as we get in the lesson. So I kind of let progress of the students dictate the pace. If it's going well though, we start looking at the Meyer sequence with the back edge cuts. So just as a reminder, the first 4 cuts in the Meyer sequence are down from the right, up along the same line, up from the right, down along the same line. So now we're going to do that with the back edge cuts. So we're going to be in our high guard. We're going to hit the high right with the back edge. We're going to push the pommel, opposing that with the lead edge. Then we're going to pull the pommel, back edge from underneath, and push the pommel over from the other side. And then we just can do it all again. So back, front, back, front, back, front, back, front, back, front, back, front. Whole bunch of that. So that really gets us to hopefully where the student is feeling comfortable not just throwing a back edge cut, but starting to adjust the angles that they're throwing the back edge cuts. And if we can, we start to talk about how we can use this back edge cut to actually use our thwart cut versus an overhow. So if the opponent is going to be in a high guard and they're going to throw a nice overhow at my head, I'm going to use that offline step that we practiced earlier. I'm going to throw the back edge cut opposing their cut so that hopefully I defend it at the same time. I smack them in the head with the false edge. At the very least, if I don't hit them, I'm in a pretty good position. But again, in a perfect world, step off to the side, hit with the false edge so I'm collecting their cut and I'm hitting them at the head. So we practice this from the high guard. I'll also have them practice this from the lower answer the phone Vomtag. Eventually we'll talk about actually doing it from like plow, because that kind of rising thwart cut is really, really helpful. But at the very basic level, we just from here and cut out. I like using the high guard to start the thwart cut, kind of for two reasons. One, because this is how Myers has to do it, you know, the high guard. But also I have found that if my hands are already high, and we've really been focusing on pulling the pommel, it gets the blade out really fast. What I see from students starting from the lower Vomtag is often they punch out their hands because they're trying to get their hands out and high. And so a lot of students get whacked in the hand because they punch out with their hand and the blade is trailing and then they're trying to get it there. It doesn't work so well. If your hands are already high and you're just doing the step and pulling the pommel, that seems to get the blade out faster, which means students get hit in the hands less. Definitely, even going slow in a pair drill at the club, I highly recommend that you at least wear a lead hand glove, because you're probably going to get smacked in the hand a few times until you get the timing and the motion right. And of course, we're wearing masks anytime we're swinging at each other in a pair drill. And that's really about it for lesson number 5. Of course, we review all of the previous lessons, and then we really spend this whole lesson introducing and trying to get comfortable with throwing back edge cuts, using the Meyer drill, the first 4 cuts in the Meyer drill with the back edge cuts, and then applying the back edge cut in the thwart cut versus the overhow. That's a lot. It takes a lot of kind of nuance to get the feel of it, and so we'll spend the entire 90 minutes or 2 hours on kind of those basic things that we saw today. Hopefully you like that, and I did this video right after working out, so I'm really glad that my legs didn't give out and I didn't face plant.